Hey everyone, and welcome to the Iceberg Lounge. I'm your host, Thomas Engel, and on today's show we'll be interviewing author Jim Kitson about his book, Jimmy the Marine. But before we get into the interview, let's go ahead and stop for our break so we can give you an uninterrupted interview. So, let's get to the break. So I'm here with Jim Kitson, the author of the book Jimmy the Marine. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Are you okay?
Oh yeah, I'm doing good now. So let's start by going over your life before the Marines.
Well, before the Marines, I was born in Texas, and my dad was an abusive alcoholic, and he abused the family, of course, and it was a symptom of his alcoholism. And we moved from Texas to Louisiana, and finally my mom had to leave him, and we moved in with my granddad in Alabama. And I always wanted to be a Marine ever since I was a young child, and we always played games, and I was the Marine, I was the John Wayne, that type of thing. It was a kind of a wish of mine. I wanted to fulfill that wish and join the Marines. And we ended up in near Chelsea, Alabama, a community called Simsville, and I went to school at Thompson High School there in Shelby County, and a Marine recruiter came to the high school, and I thought he was just the most militaristic looking guy I'd ever seen in my life, and I wanted to be like him and the rest of the Marines, and it was sort of my childhood wish that was starting to come into fruition.
So when you got deployed, where did you first get deployed?
Well, I went to basic at Parris Island, South Carolina, and then advanced training at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and then to additional advanced training at Camp Pendleton in California, then Jungle Warfare School in Okinawa, and then to Vietnam. And from Vietnam, of course, I was wounded in Vietnam, and I went from there to hospitals, and then a new duty station back at Camp Lejeune, and I finished out my Marine Corps career at Camp Lulule Naval Ammunition Depot in Oahu, Hawaii. I always tell everyone that I went from hell to heaven.
I was about to say, you traveled the world.
That's right.
So I know that you've talked about two kind of major stories in your life while you was in the Marines. Could you first talk to us about the booby trap story that you had?
Well, the booby trap incident, which they now call improvised explosive devices, to be politically correct, and we were on patrol, and during that patrol, I triggered a booby trap and was wounded, and was medevac to a field hospital, and ended up in the hospital several weeks, and on the USS Repose hospital ship, and then was sent back to my unit. And it's kind of weird because you go from desolate conditions of combat patrolling and all of that to actual sheets in a bed and hot meals, which you didn't ever get, and then all of a sudden you're back in it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of mind blowing there to go from one extreme to that, then back to that extreme. And they sent me back with stitches still in my legs.
Oh wow. Well, I was about to say they didn't let you heal that long.
No, I had to finish up healing out on combat patrols.
Oh man. You must have had to really watch yourself to get out. Make sure you didn't get any infection right there.
Well, I asked the doctor that before we left, and he said, "You're so pumped full of penicillin and other antibiotics that I don't think anything could kill you right now."
Oh, wow.
And in the Marines, we have Navy corpsmen that go out on patrols with us, and they are just super, probably some of the most bravest men you'll ever meet in your life, and they do a great job. They keep a check on everybody, and I had a great, we called them docs. I had a great doc that kept his eyes on me, made sure that nothing happened to me, and would check my wounds and all that. And they healed up actually out in the field, and it was amazing. But I was worried, like you asked. I was kind of worried I might get some kind of infection because of all the rice paddies and the conditions and everything else, you know.
Yeah, because I was about to say, Vietnam it would be more of a swampish kind of environment, wouldn't it? Wouldn't you say so?
Well, it ranged from beautiful beach to farmland to swamps to mountainous terrains to triple layer jungle, and we were exposed to all types of those terrains while we were in there in Vietnam on patrol.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have another wild story to tell too about you being blown off a tank.
Yes, we were going into a what we call a search and destroy mission. We had just come back off of patrols, and we were thinking we might get a chance to actually take a breather, but they immediately got us all gathered about and said load up on some Amtraks, which are amphibious vehicles, and we knew something was going to happen because whenever they loaded us on vehicles, they were taking us into tight situations, you know. So they loaded us on the Amtraks, took us to a drop-off point, and we went across some large rice paddy situations and into a village. And on the way into the village, we were crossing a Vietnamese farmer's garden, and as we were approaching the village, they opened up on us with fire, and I had a machine gun open up within 20, 30 feet of me and literally nearly shoot my flak jacket off, and it came so close to my helmet, one of the bullets, it sliced my helmet liner, and it was hanging down, and also had holes in my pants and my shirt, but not a bullet hit me. The Lord's provision was there watching over me there. And so we had some wounded guys, and my platoon sergeant came over and said to load my fire team on top of a tank that had come along with us, and we were going to medevac those wounded guys. And as we got everybody loaded, the tank started towards a tree line, and about the time we realized that he wasn't going to the medevac zone but towards the tree line, we started getting the wounded guys off the truck because we knew that something was about to happen. And sure enough, two rocket-propelled grenades flashed out of the tree line. One of them, to this day, I don't know exactly where it hit, but I tell in the story, during the firefight, I was actually wondering, I wonder where that other rocket-propelled grenade went. But one of the rocket-propelled grenades hit the tank I was on, blew me off of the tank about 20 feet in the air and about 20, 30 feet towards the tree line between the tank and the enemy that were firing at us, the VC, and I was knocked out. And when I woke up, my buddy had literally saved my life. He had shot a Viet Cong that was laying across my legs. And the thing about that was after the firefight, I happened to take, inventory of myself to see what all was going on, because during that little brief firefight, when I came around and saw the VC across my legs, I was firing at the enemy, and two grenades landed next to me and exploded, and it was just a really chaotic scene. And as I was taking inventory, I noticed I was bleeding all over, and my right shoulder was out of place, and I noticed my flak jacket was ripped apart, and my helmet liner hanging down, and then I noticed half of an old ice tongue that they used to use. You'd use an ice tongue to get blocks of ice. Half of an ice tongue was hooked in my chest, and I realized that if my buddy wouldn't have shot him, that guy would have drugged me back into the VC lines, and I probably would have been the main attraction for a torture session that night. So once again, God's provision in my life He had a platoon of angels watching over me.
Yeah, definitely. And so after your stint over there, how was it when you came back home to Alabama, to the U.S.?
Well, after several months in the hospital and my further duty stations and all, and I was discharged, I came home. And of course, at that time, there were a lot of people that were against the war, and they were kind of taking it out on the people that actually fought in the war, which was misguided, but it just happened to be what it was. And we got spit on, we got cussed, and all kinds of things. But we basically put that aside. I went home. I signed up to go to school. I was going to go to school at LSU, actually, and I was on the way to University of Montevallo with my cousin, and I happened to see my wife, my future wife, walking across the parking lot of the United Methodist Church there near Alabaster. It was called United Methodist Church of Slura then. And we pulled in, and I started talking to her, fell in love. We got married. I changed direction. I went, instead of going to LSU, I went to the University of Montevallo and got my degree and started my careers.
Okay, and your degree was in biology. What made you want to go into biology?
Well, as most people do when they get into college, I was probably the same in that I wasn't totally for sure which direction I wanted to go. I had an idea. I thought about medicine. I thought about legal situations. I thought about business. I didn't really want to know, but I met a college professor there by the name of E.B. Sledge. Dr. Sledge was a World War II veteran from the Pacific and made several of the island landings and was just a terrific human being, just a wonderful guy. And he was also his specialty was in science, biology, and that type. And I just kind of gravitated towards that, and before long I really enjoyed biology. So I decided that's what I'm going to do my major in biology, and that's what I did.
Oh, okay. So, what would say was your favorite part of biology? Like
Probably botany.
botany? Okay.
I really liked that, and I like the wildlife part of it too. You know, I liked enjoying. I enjoyed doing different courses that involved getting out in the woods and dealing with animals, and I especially liked. I got real hooked on ornithology. I liked ornithology a lot.
Now, what's ornithology?
That's the study of birds, basically.
Birds? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I really got into birding, was what we called it, and then I really, through one of the other professors, I really got into wildflowers. I like to go and look at wildflowers, and it just was something that appealed to me.
Okay. So years later, after you got back home, in 1993, there was a broadcast that happened that kind of changed your life a little bit.
Yes, I was coming home from work, and as I came through my door and into our den, the television was on, and the news was on, and they were showing a Army Ranger being drugged through the streets of Mogadishu. And when I saw that, I just got so mad something snapped. And I thought I'd buried my combat past and all of that, because it had literally been 28 years since I'd been in Vietnam at the time,
wow.
I think. Well, let me see, I would do it from 67 to 93, so it'd be 87. It actually was less than that. It was, be what, 67, 77, 87, 20, yeah, about 25, 26 years, 23, something like that. But I think I've got my math right there. You might have to help me with that. But anyway, I thought I had buried that part of my life, never to come up again, and not thinking about it. But something happened that day. I couldn't put it down. I couldn't forget it. I couldn't deal with it. I tried to deal with it, but my demeanor changed. I started getting angry, shouting, cursing. I did a lot of things that I didn't normally do, and I just, and now to look back, I was very ashamed of it. But the main motivation for me to go seek help was I saw fear in my family's eyes. And in any kind of thing like this, you have to get to that point where you know something's wrong, And then a little bit later, after this happened, I was going to a job site in Tuscaloosa, and I was supposed to turn off of I-59 at the Abernat exit. But the next thing I remember, I was in Meridian, Mississippi on the side of the road, and I was hearing helicopters, the deep whoop, 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 whoop sound of helicopters, and I was thinking I was back in Vietnam and I needed to go out on a mission, and yet I looked out and I saw cars going back and forth by me on the interstate, and I felt the air conditioner blowing over me, and I was just totally confused.
Oh, wow.
I had no idea where I was, what was going on, and it took me several minutes to get my wits about myself, and I realized at that point in time, after seeing the fear in my family's eyes and then doing something like this that I had lost time over, I needed to get help.
So, how did you get help? What did you do to take steps to do that?
I went to the Veterans Administration in Tuscaloosa, and at first it was a situation where they thought I was looking for some kind of relief through heavy metal drugs like lithium or something like that. And I told them, no, I'm not actually looking for any drugs. I'm not looking for anything else. I'm looking for some help, someone to talk to. And they put me in a new post-traumatic stress disorder program they had down there that they were conducting. And I was one of about 60-something people in the program. And as it progressed, the numbers dropped off drastically, and it turned out at the end to just be about 12 of us. And there were 2 of us from the Vietnam era, 1 from the Korean era, and the rest were from the World War II era. And 90% of all of the ones that went to the very end of the program, their PTSD was triggered by that same episode on television where they were dragging that ranger through the streets of Mogadishu. It was kind of just a shock, I guess, to a combat veteran's mind to see an American soldier, Marine, sailor, Air Forceman treated that way. It just was really enraged us. And the World War II veterans that were in our group had all reached the age where they had retired and they didn't have a job to go to every day. They had a lot of time to think and reflect back on their lives and all. And it really worked on them hard because they, like me, had repressed their combat experiences their whole working careers. And now all of a sudden this one incident brought it all back, and they were having trouble dealing with it. And a PTSD episode is a scary episode. One of our instructors in that class, you basically, for the first 12 to 15 months, you just study advanced psychology, basically. You just basically study the human mind, the human body, the things that affect everything. And it's sort of like being back in college and doing my biology classes again, except on a different level, pointed towards a different angle. And it was really interesting, to tell you the truth. And we really didn't talk about our combat until we had fully came to the point that we understood basically what was going on in our minds. And I think they do that on purpose, and it's a good thought when you think about it. They want you to understand exactly what's going on, why it's going on, and how it's going on before you unleash those beasts in your head. And so the best way I explain it is one of the instructors in that was actually a medevac chopper pilot in Vietnam. I can't remember his name other than Bob. I wish I could. But he explained to us that a PTSD episode is better put like your mind is a giant video recorder. And yet it's even more than a video recorder because it also can smell, it can touch, it can hear, it can taste, and it has all those subtle little things that are all in between. You know, maybe you might say the sixth sense, or whatever, however you want to say it, you know. But your mind is like that. And when you're in a stressful situation, in my case, it was combat, but it could be any trauma. It could be a terrible traffic accident. It can be you were involved in an assault where someone was killed, or you were beaten badly, or any kind of thing, abuse, some kind of abuse, a rape, any kind of trauma that anybody can come into in their lives. But your mind, while that trauma is going on, is recording everything. Not just what is happening to you, not just what you see, not just what you hear and feel and everything else, but it's picking up everything around you. It might be hearing a brake from a vehicle on the highway somewhere, or somebody talking way off somewhere, or in our case, we were specifically focused on our area that we were fighting in during a firefight, and yet we heard everybody else screaming and yelling around us. We saw movement in our peripheral vision, but all these things our mind was soaking in, but we were focused on one thing, survival, and we didn't realize at the time all that was going on, but our mind was soaking everything that was going on around us in a 360 type situation, every sound, smell, everything. And when you have a PTSD situation, your mind, something triggers it. In my case, I think what triggered me that day when I went to Meridian is I had smelled something. And I'd go driving along. I don't know if it was somebody burning something, an animal had been burned, or there's some kind of smell. I remember that much, but it basically triggered a PTSD incident that I didn't even know was going on. And next thing I know, I'm in Meridian. Well, that's what a PTSD incident is. Whatever triggers it, your mind all of a sudden unleashes all those sounds, noises, actions, visions, everything that your mind recorded around a certain situation and floods you. And you can't handle it. You basically either go blank or you break down. You don't know what is going on. You're totally stupefied.
Yeah.
It's just it's a phenomenon that I'd never experienced before. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, and that's an interesting look on it. I've never really heard an example like that before, and it kind of helps me understand it a little bit better of what someone's going through when it comes to a PTSD moment. So that was the course that you took on PTSD, or was there another course that you took on?
No, that was basically it. The PTSD course, I went 2 days a week, 3 hours a day for nearly 2 years.
Okay.
And it was it wasn't an easy thing to do,
Right.
because you had to sacrifice your time and mileage while you're still doing your things with your family, and you're doing your 8 or 10 hours a day work day. So I managed to juggle all of it and make it work, but it wasn't an easy thing to do. And then on top of all of that, I had to realize and fight myself saying, oh, you don't need to do this. This is just an isolated incident, when I knew it wasn't. I knew something was wrong. So it's any kind of a psyche type thing like that, you have to want to get better. And then you actually literally have to fight yourself, because part of your psyche is telling you, you don't need to do this. You just forget this and let's go on back. This won't ever happen again. And this is what happens with a lot of people in addictions, or even this PTSD thing, is they give in to their psyche. Like we started with 60-something and ended with 12. Well, all those others decided that they could do it on their own. They didn't need help. And they're probably still where they were the day they sought help, because they were never. This is one of those situations where you got to give up and hand it over to God and let things happen that will happen that you can't control. And that's one of the hardest things for some people to give up, is control. If you're not able to admit something's wrong and work hard to try to do something about it, then it won't be successful as far as these classes go.
Yeah. So what made you want to write Jimmy the Marine?
Well, over the years, especially right when I first got back from Vietnam, my sisters and my mother and my brother and all my aunts, uncles, and friends, they all wanted me to talk about Vietnam. And that was the last thing a combat veteran wants to talk about is combat. It's terrible. It's something you don't want to ever remember again until the day you die or past that. You just don't want to go over that anymore. You want it to go away. It was terrible. But over the years, people would ask me to write a little snippet here or a snippet there about something. Usually it was not directly related to a combat incident so much as, for instance, Charlene Stevenson here at the church asked me several times to write on little incidents that happened, like, what'd y'all do at Christmas? And I wrote a little something and I explained to her, well, we were on patrol. We didn't even realize it was Christmas until Christmas Day was there. And it dawned on us it was Christmas, and so we started singing some carols, and then we got in trouble with the platoon sergeant telling us we need to be quiet, keep our silence, because it was imperative that we stayed silent and stealth, or you could run into trouble and get in a firefight. So later on, when we stopped and had a chance to take a break, whenever we could, we'd swap sea rations with each other and we'd tell each other Merry Christmas. Little things like that, and I'd write other little stories about this or another little story about that, but nothing comprehensive. And I didn't get into deep details with anybody. And so as the years passed by and I ended up with my own children, my youngest son, Jake, especially, my oldest son, Jamie, and even my wife, Kathy, would they'd be interested in some of the things that happened to me, but they knew I was kind of tight-lipped on it. And my youngest son, Jake, just kept pressing me all the time. He said, Dad, you need to write something. You need to write something. So once I retired, I got to thinking about it, and I started jotting things down here and jotting things down there. And then I started calling some of the people that I had served with and asked them what they thought about it. And it all came down to the point where it looked like I needed to write something about it, and I felt good about it. But I made up my mind I wouldn't get into blood and guts and gory details. In my book, I write about things, but I don't get into that. You can read between the lines pretty easy in what I write. And I also decided I wasn't going to put a lot of cussing in my book. In fact, there's hardly, if any, cussing in my book, and a lot of people, they don't think you could write a book about combat in the Marines and all unless you've got a lot of cussing in it. And I just wasn't going to do that. And I give that all to one of my friends from childhood that lived not too far from me, who also wrote a book called Stealth Patrol. His name's Billy Shanahan. Billy said when he wrote his book, they wanted him to take it back and expand it and put a lot of cussing in it and all that. And he said, I will not do that. And if that's what you want, I don't care if the book ever gets published. Oh, wow. He stuck by his guns. They published a book, and it was a really good book. And so I learned from him, you don't have to have all of that. You don't need that. It's unnecessary. If you can't speak and tell without all that, then you need to work on your language skills.
Yeah. So speaking about the book, what makes this book different from other books about Vietnam?
Well, most military books or combat books, when you read it, people try to go into details like what combat unit did this, what general did that, what officer did that, what specifics were all in there. And they do that for a reason, because some people like the historical content of this particular Marine division went into this particular area of Vietnam on this particular day and did this particular thing. And it's all from usually a officer's view or a view of unit integration into the situation, Mm-hmm. And the difference in my book is I come at you from the standpoint of a normal, everyday, average American that joined the service and was fighting in a situation where our country was divided over. I don't get into details about units. I don't talk about different commanders and generals and all that. I want you to know how the normal, everyday American youth had to deal with a combat situation. And I think that's what makes this book a lot different. It's just spoken from the heart, and I tried to make it as much as I could like me. I wanted you to know me. I didn't want you to know the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines, or General so-and-so. I wanted you to know Jim Kitson, the Marine that went to Vietnam and did these things. And I think that makes the difference right there.
Yeah, and I really do pray God uses this book to maybe help someone out there, with these issues of PTSD, and maybe help others understand also kind of like the view of it, like you just told us about the brain being like a video camera, but not only that, but it catches everything. And I feel this is going to be an awesome book. Where can you get this book at?
You can, here locally, you can get it from me, or you can get it from Stewart's, Pools, and Christian Bookstore in the Parkland Shopping Center. And also, you can order it from Amazon Books online.
Okay.
And I have also heard here recently that you can go to Books A Million or Barnes and Noble and ask them to order it for you. They don't carry it in stock, but they can order it. So there's several ways you can go to it.
Yeah, that'll be good, because I have a bunch of international listeners who would probably love to order that and kind of see the view of an American soldier.
Well, if they're international, I think Amazon prints it in different languages.
Oh, that would be, yeah.
I think. Now, don't hold me that, but I read something when I was doing my publishing on it that they do that. So.
Well, that's cool. And so, you have a Facebook page?
I do. I've got Jimmy the Marine. It's actually a create space type thing, and it's on my Facebook page.
Okay.
Jim Kitson.
All right. Well, thank you so much for telling me all this. And yeah, I go get Jimmy the Marine, where he mentions those international people, also where to get that from what he said. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Tom.
Thanks for listening to the Iceberg Lounge. A special thanks to author Jim Kitson. For his information about his book or Facebook page, look in the description of this podcast. For everything else dealing with the Iceberg Lounge, also check the description. Remember, I love y'all, and all to God.